The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
So you thought the college football coaching go-round this season was nuts. Penn State goes from number one in the country to Coach James Franklin getting fired 4 games into the season, only to wind up at Virginia Tech before the end of the year, where he managed to flip most of his recruits from Penn State to Virginia Tech. Then there was the Brian Kelly story, the $54 million buyout at LSU for his family, and many other stories. But we got one now that blows the lid off of all of those. It is explosive. Details are coming out, and it is one of the wildest coaching stories I have ever heard. Sherrone Moore fired at Michigan with cause, and details, though they are still in the reported stage, are just absolutely mind-blowing on this. Let's first get to the background on it. Moore, as you know, had replaced Jim Harbaugh when Harbaugh went to the Chargers, not this season, but last season. And behind, he left a mess. And there was a show cause, so much cheating that if Jim Harbaugh wanted to go back to college, it would be very difficult. Well, that's not going to happen. And Sherrone Moore, who was his loyal assistant, got moved up. He didn't have any real dirt that they could find on his hands, but it's pretty clear that when all of this stuff was going on with the sign stealing and the improper benefits, though they seem minor during COVID, he was involved in that. But, okay, he got his opportunity, moved up to $5.5 million a year, not the highest paid coach in football, but he had one of the top 10 jobs for sure. Coaching football at Michigan is a dream job for anybody who becomes a college football coach. He's not even 40 years old yet. And though there are always rocky things involved with coaching a high-level football program, people outwardly weren't talking about Sherrone Moore, but behind the scenes, there were things. There were things going on. So we get this bombshell yesterday afternoon where the school releases a statement saying that football coach Sherrone Moore has been terminated with cause effective immediately. Following a university investigation, credible evidence was found that Coach Moore engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a staff member. Now, usually when you get a coach fired, you don't get all that stuff in a statement. There's, just we've terminated him and we're searching for a new coach or something like that. But to kind of throw out there what he's accused of is kind of strange. And then later in the day, Sherrone Moore is arrested and held in custody. And I'll get to the details that are being reported about that in just a moment. But last night, Dan Wetzel, who is based in Michigan for ESPN and has done a lot of the reporting on this, appeared with Scott Van Pelt with the details of how this firing went down.
Michigan concluded an investigation into Sherrone Moore earlier Wednesday and determined with credible evidence that he had a inappropriate relationship with a staff member against university policy and his own contract, and he was immediately fired for cause. Soon after that, at about 4:10 p.m., Pittsfield Township Police just outside Ann Arbor responded to a call to residents where they were there to investigate an alleged assault. Sherrone Moore had left the place at that time and was later detained, as you said, by the Saline Police Department, which is another town a little bit outside of Ann Arbor, which then brought him back to Pittsfield Township. At 8:30 tonight, I'm sorry, he was brought to the Washtenaw County Jail, where he is in custody due to the alleged assault, and actual charges will be determined by the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office in the next day or so.
All right, so those are the very serious issues related to this storyline, and we will wait for the clarity and the details as they are forthcoming in the coming hours and days. As for the story, as we work our way back to what you mentioned, which is the firing of Sherrone Moore, and I just want to be frank here. I mean, in college football circles, this was not a closely held secret. There was a lot of smoke, a lot of innuendo, but you all aren't in the business of reporting that. So I guess what I'm going to ask as it relates to this dismissal and the investigation is, when was it that Michigan really felt like they might be in the business of needing to find a new head coach?
Well, I think the investigation began, recently. At least this part of the investigation into Sherrone Moore's conduct, and at least over a week ago. And like they said in their statement, you need credible evidence to make a firing, particularly for a cause of this situation. It's a very sensitive situation for everyone involved. And so that's when it took time. But I agree, there was a lot of rumors, there was a lot of gossip. It wasn't necessarily a closely held secret, but Michigan had their investigation. This is when they came up with in early December.
And again, there are so many layers to this, some legal and some as it just relates to the football program. And just to focus on the football piece of this, you've just had signing day. You've just had this wild cycle that's seen jobs at Penn State and LSU and Florida and on and on and on come open. And now here comes Michigan, which is one of the crown jewels in the sport. And I don't know who will be making the hire. There's a lot of questions regarding that. But just in terms, Dan, of the names that a program like Michigan might reasonably expect to be able to lure to Ann Arbor, who might we be looking at?
Yeah, the timing here isn't the best for Michigan. Had they done this, had this situation, this job opened a month ago, they and LSU would have been the prime jobs to people have, and probably in a different candidate pool with each one of them. It is a school with enormous resources and potential, a lot of money, biggest stadium in the country, huge fan base, all of that. So it is an attractive job. The names that get thrown out right away, you hear about Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, but I've been told he's very comfortable there. He's got a great recruiting class coming in, alignment portal. He seems pretty happy there. There's a number of other possibilities. Whether it's Jed Fish up at Washington or Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri, or who knows, really. Any of those types of guys might be in, or they could go the NFL ranks. The issue for Michigan is a number of high-profile coaches and really desirable coaches just sign new deals either at the school they were at that may prevent all these guys that I just mentioned, or took new jobs. So instead of being the pick of the litter, they're coming in late on this cycle. But this is a very attractive job. I wouldn't be surprised if there was NFL interest in it. Harbaugh kind of proved that you can win big there and set up a system. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting job hunt, but it's not the perfect of timing for the Wolverines.
Oh, no, it's not. And you wonder about the name Cliff Kingsbury. Kingsbury may get another job in the NFL. I can't see him coming back here next year unless he looks at the landscape and says, I'm good for another year. Because remember, he's still getting money from the head coaching job at Arizona. So he's still making a pile of cash to be an offensive coordinator. And he's got a developing quarterback, though this year has gone kind of sideways with Jayden Daniels. We'll get to more on that in a minute. But that might be where they look. Kalen DeBoer, okay, maybe the only thing I could see changing is, let's say in the playoff they get blown out by Oklahoma, and then the fan base at Alabama gets a little restless and they want to kind of shove them out the door. But it's not a better job to leave Alabama for Michigan. That's one of the few jobs that you wouldn't leave Michigan for, especially if you feel comfortable there. And what Wetzel is saying is that he does. Now, back to the juicy details that are being reported about this incident. Reports are that he was having an affair with an assistant on his staff named Paige Shriver, and he promoted her when he became the head coach in 2024. And just this past year, he bumped her salary from $58,000 to $90,000. That's quite a bump for an assistant who is, more or less taking care of, incidental things, not necessarily related to football. And that reports are that he got her pregnant and paid for an abortion. Then the school began an investigation. I think it was only last month that it really ramped up, and they didn't necessarily find anything enough to push him out the door, but something must have come up yesterday which forced them to say, oh, boy, we got to bail now. I mean, it's 3 weeks before a bowl game. You got the transfer portal opening next month. This is not the time to fire a coach, but there must have been something that they saw that was damning, overwhelmingly damning evidence. And so the reports are that Sherrone Moore, after being fired, went home Didn't necessarily have any physical violence against his wife. This again is the reporting, but that he had threatened to kill himself. And then he left for a residence in Saline, Michigan. According to reports, the residence in Saline is the home of Paige Shriver. And during that time, after leaving his home and driving to this home of the assistant, he held a knife to his own throat and threatened to kill both himself and the staffer, allegedly Paige Shriver. So now we're talking something very, very serious, a threat of a murder-suicide. And according to this report, he was then intercepted at a local church after his wife provided his phone's location to authorities and is now in protective custody. So think of how this happened all yesterday. That yesterday morning we wake up and we go, oh, yeah, well, pretty good year for Michigan. They didn't make the playoff, but they're going to play Texas in a bowl game in a few weeks. And Sherrone Moore moves on. I'm sure he's working with his recruiting class, too. By the afternoon, we find out he's fired with a hell of a statement by the university that he was terminated with cause effective immediately, finding credible evidence that he was having an inappropriate relationship with a staffer, and now he's in jail, as far as I know. I don't know if, and they say protective custody. I think they're probably worried about a suicide at this point. Wow. So all of that happened in a very, very short period of time, and this is one of the plum jobs in college football. I think if you were making a list, just off the top of your head, you'd say, and you wouldn't even say Indiana yet, even though Indiana's number one in the country and undefeated. You'd list the usual Ohio State, and then you go to Michigan and the Big Ten, and you go to Alabama and LSU, and you wouldn't have to go very far to get a list of 5 or 6 that stand above the rest. And now what? Now what for Michigan with this incredible series of events happening over just about 4 or 5 hours yesterday? And we'll keep an eye on Twitter because things are happening fast here, and new details are spilling out on that. As for Ashburn, this kind of now seems tame, but I think there's some levels to this that we need to talk about. We're not going to have number 5 again this week, with Dan Quinn saying after the game, after the 31-0 loss in Minnesota, that Jayden Daniels had been cleared to play, and he could have put him back in the game but chose not to because they were off, as he put it. It was, I think it was either 14-0 or 17-0 when he got hit, knocked down after throwing an interception, trying to chase down the returner, and he could have come back, and I guess if they were close, he would have. But now Quinn says, this is now 4 days later, they had the brief workout on Monday, the examination, all the physical stuff that they do after a game, and this is what Dan Quinn revealed yesterday about Jayden Daniels.
He did re-aggravate his elbow injury in the game. No structural setbacks. However, through the medical evaluations, over the last couple of days, including this morning, doctors advised us we hold him this Sunday. And so Marcus will start. And we're really bummed for Jayden. Like, he is working incredibly hard to get back on the field with his guys. And so tough deal. He's absolutely going for it. So wanted to get that out as we got started, and glad to open up to you guys and get rolling as we get ready for the Giants.
Do you anticipate him coming back this season, and what's, again, the value, I guess, with all 3 games?
Well, I know that's why I wanted to come out. He's going to be out this week. He'll practice as we're going in a limited fashion. But let's see where we're at next week. We're always going to make the best decisions, John, for him, for the team, what the medical, opinions are. So we kind of just wanted to give you that information today, and then we can work into next week. A
couple of follow-ups on that. One is what Jayden Daniels was doing when he got hurt. And I remember this with RG3 when he played a preseason game. In those days, they had 4. I think he only played in 2 or 3 of them. But in one of them, he threw an interception and was trying to chase down the returner and didn't get hurt or anything. But Sonny Jurgensen, who was doing the postgame, warned him, don't do that. Don't put your career in jeopardy. And we didn't know much about Griffin at that time, and I forget what the answer was, but he was respectful. And Sonny would know, because in 1971, when George Allen came here and came in with the defense and a quarterback in Sonny that was capable of taking them to the Super Bowl in a preseason game against Miami, same thing, threw an interception, tried to make a tackle. At that point, he was, 37, 38 years old. And he broke his shoulder, and it essentially ruined his first season. And then the next 2 years were, Sonny and Billy and yada, yada, yada. So, he certainly knew and he understood that couldn't be what RG3 did. Now, that's not how he ultimately got hurt, but you got to be a little bit more careful on that. So Quinn was asked, and I thought the answer was interesting. He was asked, do you tell him not to do that? And I would have thought he would say something like, well, that's part of the learning process. And yes, Jayden has to learn that when he throws an interception, you can't risk putting yourself out of the game trying to make a tackle. Because even if you get, I think it was a linebacker who made the interception. And even if he caught up to him, that was going to be a difficult player to tackle at whatever he weighs, 205 pounds. But Quinn stopped short of that, and I thought this answer was interesting because it indicates to me that, maybe things aren't as hunky-dory between coach and quarterback. This is just a feel. See for yourself. This was yesterday. Quinn asked about Jayden trying to chase down a returner.
Fortunately, it's not a scenario we're in a lot with him. So I'm super thankful for that. And, it's not something that we, practice a whole lot or techniques of that. And so you get blocked, some as a, person that's going after, but the guy's a competitive player, and, we're not going to live our whole life scared. I can promise you that, but we're going to do everything and all the time, great decisions for him, for the team, and where we're at. But, I'm fortunate that we don't talk about a play like that a lot.
Yeah, he's usually prepared with answers, and he's sort of rambling around there. And he says, we're not going to play scared, but we got to make good decisions. Seems to make good decision, get out of the way. Don't get yourself hurt on something like that. Live to play another play. That I thought was kind of an odd answer. And then they get to the shutdown question, which, everybody has now. Well, if you're not going to play them this game, you got 3 left, 2 against the Eagles with a really good defense. I mean, do you really, want to risk some kind of off-season surgery or something like that? And this is Quinn kind of dancing around that as well.
We haven't really gone down that road yet to decide. He's out this week, and he's working hard to get back. But as far as what decisions are ahead, we just haven't gone down that road. He's working incredibly hard to get back with the guys. So, we're really bummed they got, re-aggravated on this specific injury going into it. Thought he had a good week. There were things to improve upon into the game to get started. But, we haven't gone down all the way yet. We just, kind of went through the first evaluations this week to get ready to play. So I'll have a better update as we're moving forward.
It is curious. He goes from he could have come back in the game on Sunday to he's not going to play this week because we found out he re-aggravated the elbow. I mean, I don't know why they weren't able to determine that on Sunday, to, we're not really sure if he's going to play the rest of the year. It would seem to me that if Quinn said on Sunday that he could have come back in the game, the answer would be, well, we're going to evaluate him next week, but if he's cleared to play, he's going to start. He's our starting quarterback. We still have 3 games to go. Didn't say that. So there could be some, internal discussions in the organization. Do we really want to risk this for what are meaningless games? Of course, they're telling the players and they're telling the public, oh, yeah, these are still very important games. But it's curious to hear that from Dan Quinn, who has had, he even made fun of himself a week or so ago by answering questions and not saying anything. And he's kind of become the master of that. But he's always prepared with an answer. Like, these are rehearsed in his head. These answers of chasing down a ball carrier and whether or not they're going to shut him down kind of are rambling and meandering. And I just wonder what's going on behind the scenes in discussions about a player who, look, obviously there were big concerns for him last year. but he did stay healthy, started all 17 games, and started the 3 playoff games. And then this year, he's about to miss his 7th game in 14 for the team. So after the game on Sunday, he will have missed half the games and is checked out of several others with injuries. So it's a big concern right now. And the big concern, I think, in the offseason is drilling through his head. Yes, use what makes you great. Use your legs when you need to, but be smart about it. Don't try to be the hero on every play. And some guys never learn that. That may be something that never reaches him. He's a smart player. He spends a lot of time studying. That's why I say stop with the RG3 comparisons, because RG3 never put in the time in the tape room that Jayden does, the mental part of the game. But also, you do have to be concerned about an injury history here, which is limited, relatively limited. I don't think it's any. How many guys last year started all 17 games? I bet you there weren't more than a handful of quarterbacks that did that. But this year, obviously, has been disastrous in that respect. And his performance when he plays isn't nearly up to the standard of last year. But I think some of that has to be related to coming in and out of the lineup all the time. I think there's some. At least you hope that. But we'll see. All right, coming up, this is, if you're over the age of 40, you have to love this story. Whether you think that Phillip Rivers is going to make magic and lead the Colts into the playoffs, or whether you think he's going to fall flat on his face and it's going to be a freaking disaster, it piques your interest. And there are very varied opinions about this. But what Rivers did yesterday at his news conference was just great stuff. Steve Young weighs in on it. Mel Kiper will weigh on it next. And we'll also hear from Dominique Foxworth, who played at Maryland and played a number of years in the NFL, including winning a Super Bowl with the Ravens. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Before we get to the amazing Phillip Rivers story, just a few more details on the firing of Sherrone Moore as coach at Michigan. Robert Littell has some reporting at a site called BSO about his rise and fall. He's been at Michigan a long time, relatively speaking. Not the Joe Paterno length that we used to have in college football, but he was hired there in 2018, so it's almost 8 years ago. Started out as a tight ends coach, moved up to co-offensive coordinator. Then there was some hanky-panky going on during COVID, where Jim Harbaugh, the head coach, was accused of meeting with recruits and buying them cheeseburgers, which, believe it or not, at that time was a violation. It's before all hell broke loose with NIL, but it violated the rules at the time, gave them cheeseburgers, for God's sake. To get ahead of the NCAA penalties, Michigan self-imposed a 3-game suspension for Harbaugh to start the 2023 season. Also during that period, Moore, who was involved in, I guess, Cheeseburger Gate, his coaching duties were rotated, and he served a 1-game suspension in the season opener for his own involvement in the recruiting violations. I didn't look at the schedule, but I imagine they opened up with a cupcake. So what? Then there was the Connor Stallions sign stealing scandal, and Moore was implicated in the cover-up. They didn't really find anything severe on that, but when Jim Harbaugh was suspended, it was Sherrone Moore who moved up to acting head coach and did a good job. They beat Penn State 24-15. Then they beat Maryland. I was at that game, actually. And Maryland, not a good team. They beat them 31-24. Pretty close game in College Park. But then the crown jewel, they beat Ohio State in November 30-24. And then we get these reports that there were some text messages between he and Stallions that were deleted, so that goes back to the investigation on that. But that all goes by the wayside. Then, less than 2 years ago, January 26, following the national championship and Jim Harbaugh going to the Chargers, Moore moves up to head coach. 5-year contract with a starting salary of $5.5 million a year. Pretty good starting salary. They have a rough year, 2024. They finish 8-5, but if you finish the season with a win over Ohio State, it's always a good year. And this year they finished 9-3, but they lost to Ohio State. And that may be, you know what, the way college football works, that may have been his biggest sin. I'm being facetious here, but if you lose to Ohio State and you're the head coach at Michigan, all of a sudden things start to get a little suspicious around the program. Like everybody looks the other way when you beat the Buckeyes, but oh no. So the middle of last month, the athletic department received an anonymous tip alleging that Moore is engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a staff member, the name Paige Shriver. Then early this month, investigators reportedly find credible evidence corroborating the tip with multiple rumors about abortions, stalking, salary spikes, and they found her pay information because Michigan is a public school. So they found that her salary bumped in 1 year from $58,000 to $90,000. That's quite a bump for a woman who was an assistant in the program, not involved in recruiting or anything like that, and the allegations that he paid for an abortion for her. And then yesterday afternoon comes the statement from the university that they have fired him with cause, meaning he doesn't get the rest of his money, and that there was credible evidence that he was involved in an inappropriate relationship with a staffer. And then police were called at 4 o'clock to a house on Saline Road in the 3000 block of Ann Arbor, right around the school, with unidentified rumors that he was there and had allegedly threatened to kill her and to kill himself, and now has been taken into protective custody. So there you go. Rising coach, young man, 2008, he's 39 now, so he was early 30s, moving from tight ends coach to head coach to now fired in shame and sitting in jail. Wow, crazy. Phillip Rivers, back with the Colts, 44 years old. He's a grandfather and showed up for the usual Wednesday news conference for the quarterbacks yesterday in Indianapolis and was asked the obvious question to start. Why?
I've tried to make this as simple as I can. I'll try not to get emotional, actually, you asking that. As simple as can be is a coach that I love and an organization that I really enjoyed being with. Mr. Irsay believing in me in that year in 2020 when it didn't go so good in 2019. And shoot, the teammates that I were able to play with, 14 of them are still here. Training room's the same, PR guys are the same, equipment room's the same, and they wanted me, and I try to keep it as simple as that. And a game I love to play, a game that I thought I was done playing. Certainly, I wasn't really hanging on any hope of playing again. I'd kind of thought that ship had sailed, but something about it excited me, and it's kind of one of those deals. The door opens and you can either walk through it and find out if you can do it, or run from it. And I know that there's risk involved, obviously, of what may or may not happen. But the only way to find out is going for it. And I just felt almost like it was a gift, another opportunity to play and cut it loose with your guys in the game you love to play, and the dream that you got to live. You may get some bonus time. So I really kept it as simple as that in my mind. And here I stand.
Phil, it's a tough game. Physically, you ready for it? Ready for this?
Yeah, we're gonna find out that too. I think so. I know. I know it is tough, and I know 5 years is a long time. Believe me, that weighed on me a lot. It being so long, but it also is a game I've played a long time and stayed in. Over the last 5 years, and I know high school ball is different, but staying involved in the game, and I've watched the Colts and the Chargers every Sunday, about every snap, and I watch about every game there is, and I know that's not NFL playing quarterback. I know that's a far stretch from that, but it's not like I just kind of shut football down and I'm trying to pick it back up. I've been very into it since I've been gone, but yeah, no, it is a physical game, and it's fast, and dudes are big and fast. Just like they were, and so I'm just take it a day at a time, and I do feel good. There's something about being back in this building that feels right, And I'm just thankful and, like I said, really just taking it one meeting at a time, one lift at a time, and really embracing it and going after it.
Shoot is about the dirtiest word that he says. Now, you heard Phillip Rivers say that he never dreamed of doing this again. Well, Sean Merriman may beg to differ. His teammate with the Chargers, remember, Merriman was a big star at Maryland in the early 2000s, lights out Merriman, and was Defensive Rookie of the Year for the Chargers in 2005. And they met up at the Hall of Fame because their teammate, Antonio Gates, went in over the summer. And as a matter of fact, just about a month before that, Rivers had officially retired from the NFL as a member of the Chargers. I know his last team was the Colts, but he did play 16 years with the Chargers and wanted to retire as a Bolt, and he did that. So they're together at the Hall of Fame ceremony, and Merriman said the more you talk to him, it seemed like football never left his system. And I think that there's a lot to be said for that. I've talked about this, that I remember working with Sam Huff in the early 90s when he was in his late 50s. He hadn't played football at that point in close to 25 years. And I think he still felt like he may not have a season left in him, but he had a game left in him. And I think he believed he could get out there for one game and still play. And even at whatever level it ended for you, and for me, it was as a bad high school football player, you know, going back a year later to watch a game, you feel some pangs. Like you see some of your old teammates out there on the field, and you remember, the games were not very good for me. You know, when I did get on the field, I usually got my butt kicked. But the whole, atmosphere, the locker room, the camaraderie, all that, you miss that. And then when you get to the highest level and you play 17 years, even if it's 5 years out, there's a pull. Now, there's one thing I did notice in watching this news conference online. It was the number of chins that Phillip seems to have at this point, leading to this obvious question at the news conference about his current weight.
Right this second? I'm not sure, Greg. How about that? That's an honest answer.
Second question. You thought when when Dane went down, I wonder if they're going to call me. The organization's been through a bunch since you left. How many times have you thought, I wonder if Shane's going to call me?
Yeah, not a lot. Not a lot, and it hadn't even been considered, really. And I didn't think it would be considered. Obviously, I'm not here to evaluate or comment on how it's gone, since 2020 by any means. Some of it's just sticking unlucky in my mind. No, I've been pulling for these guys like crazy. Obviously, you pull for coaches across the league and teammates that you played with, and really that's all it's been. I do keep in contact with Shane a little more because we're running the same offense. I mean, I told Gunner last night I gave him a play off the call sheet, and he was like, "Dang," because it's like, we ran that play 2 weeks ago in the semifinal game. You know what I mean? It's like, so that part's cool. That part's cool. And I will answer your question a little better on the playing weight, Greg. And not what it was when I walked off the field in Buffalo. All right. I can tell you that. But then I'll follow that up with, I ain't never ran away from anybody anyway. Right? So I'm gonna, they people say, well, they're gonna know you're gonna be right there, and it's like, well, they knew that for 16, 17 years.
Yeah, in a game where you have to have your legs. He was one of the last of the dinosaurs, and it's been 5 years since he walked off the field. Just about January of 2021 was his last game, the playoff game that they lost to the Buffalo Bills. He's a little heftier, looks a little heftier than he was then. That doesn't mean he can't play, but, that's going to be a factor as well. Steve Young, yesterday on PTI, he walked away after concussions. This was 1999, so he'd been in the league quite a while, and even going back to his days in the USFL, even though he sat on the bench for the better part of 3 years, backing up Joe Montana. But Steve Young, when asked about this to start the conversation with Tony and Mike yesterday, gave it kind of the chuckle and really did a great job of putting in perspective the idea of someone sitting out for that long and coming back at the age of 44 expecting to play.
When you're playing, you're one of the best in the world at something, and when it ends too early, and you crave it because it took all of you, spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, physically. You poured yourself into it to be any good in the NFL, to be great. You want to keep doing it, and it's hard to leave. And so we all talk about it. Jerry Rice and I talked about it for, I don't know, maybe for 20 years. Like, I think we could still do it. But you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be mature enough to realize it is a young man's game. It's an elite athletic event. And you have been sitting on your couch. And I don't care how much you've been trying to stay in shape. If Philip says, I've been staying in shape, you've been preparing for pickleball or Pilates with your wife. Like, you have not been getting ready for the NFL and what's going to happen. So my biggest worry is that you blow the Achilles. You blow your knee out. Your shoulder gives out. The second, but less worrisome, is you look like a fool. Because, I mean, look, everyone says, you've been out for 4 years, you look like a fool. I'm okay, but no one wants to get really hurt. You are not prepared. Nobody. The best athletes in the world get hurt after preparing year-round, and now you're going to show up after being on the couch for 4 years? That's tough. But I understand the draw. Philip, I understand the draw, brother. If someone called me right now, I'd be like, it is my era. Like, maybe. I don't know. Is this really happening? Honestly, is this really happening? Is he starting? What are we going to say? It's Wednesday. Is it happening?
Right. It's out of Walter.
Is it?
It's just, he's not coming out. He's not coming out to sit on the bench though, Steve. And you know him. His ego is pretty damn healthy.
If he does it, let me say it after I went on and on there. If he does it, we all need to just bow down and just say the great Philip Rivers, because that's amazing.
That's Steve Young, who played the game, Hall of Fame level, which Rivers might reach, though if he does play, it's Seattle this week. If he does play in Seattle, the clock resets, and he wouldn't be eligible again until 2031. Always good to hear from Mel Kiper on these things. He was on yesterday on our morning show on Sportsmanlike. He's on every Wednesday. And Mel goes back to watching Philip Rivers play at North Carolina State and projecting his draft spot.
I love Philip Rivers. I was with him and his wife at the Senior Bowl, leaving the Senior Bowl back when he was coming out of college at NC State. To see his career to go the way it did. Yes, he didn't get to the Super Bowl, but he's like Dan Fouts, a great career. You don't have to get to a Super Bowl to have a great career. To see him at 44, and I brought up Browning Tannehill's name, guys. I brought up Tannehill as a guy I'd make a call to. He's 37. Think about that. He's 37. Philip's 44. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, and to think that he still has enough to accept that, and for them to reach out to him to kind of save the year, because it's a free fall. It's obviously a team that thought they could be a Super Bowl team, thought they had an MVP quarterback, and since Daniel got hurt, and he tried to play through it, and Tragic got hurt again, and they're just scrambling now with Richardson's situation, with Leonard, and now they got to try to get Phillips. So I couldn't be happier for Philip Rivers. At 44, are you kidding me? To be able to come back into this league if he can, and who knows? This will be a movie if it happens, I'll tell you.
Mel, when you were scouting him, were you nervous about his throwing motion?
Not at all. Hey, Evan, we were at the Senior Bowl that year, and I remember being on the field watching him, and he had the quickest release I'd ever seen. It was unorthodox, the way he throws. I understand his son throws the same way, but it's really got out so quick and so accurate, and he could see it and let it rip, and just a great kid. And he had all those years starting, and he had played so much football, and what he had done in college, and just a great player. And just to see him down there, that was the year Roethlisberger and Manning and Eli came out, and we were all debating, okay, how's that order? And I said, hey, I think all three are going to be really good. Edward, who's going to be the bust? They don't all have to be. It doesn't have to be a year where there's a bust, and that was a year where there were no busts. They were all booms, and for Philip to do what he did and have that deal on draft day, but to see him still being able to, somebody to think he can still play and get it done at age 44 after being out of football is pretty amazing. It speaks to what Philip Rivers is made out of, and just a great kid and great family. And should be a Hall of Famer.
One more on the comeback of Philip Rivers, and this is from an opponent. You heard from Steve Young, Hall of Fame quarterback, who retired before Philip Rivers came along. You heard from Mel Kiper, who analyzed him for draft position. Now, Dominique Foxworth, who was a star at Maryland and played in the NFL with the Broncos and the Ravens, and faced Philip Rivers both in college and the pros, and is actually younger still, and he's been out of football quite a while. Foxworth on what he projects for Philip Rivers in his comeback.
How does this work out for Philip Rivers and the Colts?
Poorly. I don't know. Like, as much as he's older than me, and as much as I would want older guys, I played against Phillip Rivers a bunch in college back when Maryland was in ACC, and a bunch when I was in Denver and he was in San Diego. So, like, obviously I'm rooting for the older guy to have success, but it's really fast and it's really hard. And his career didn't end because he was tired of playing football. His career ended because he was not producing. So I'm not sure what some time off, some rest is going to do, but I don't imagine that it's going to go all that well. I think they're probably better off when Riley Leonard gets healthy, or I don't know, someone who's actually been playing football. I know he's been coaching, but it's so fast. It's so violent. And we see Aaron Rodgers, who hasn't stopped playing. Like, obviously, the threat of getting hit has changed the way that he plays. I'm assuming that Phillip Rivers is a normal human being, and he's going to be a little skittish.
Okay, explain that to me, that you can see that Rodgers, he's different now because he's afraid of getting hit.
Yeah, I mean, and saying he's afraid of getting hit makes it feel insulting. Like, he's a reasonable person, and he can't move the way that he can normally move. Like, yeah, that willingness to hold on to the ball for a half a second longer and have a 250-pound super athlete jump through your chin it changes. It changes a lot when it hurts a little bit more, and when you're not as explosive, and also when you don't feel like you're in contention in the way that you once were. So I think I'm not the only one who notices it. Like, we all see it. He's more quick to get rid of the ball. And the reason why I think he had good numbers last week is because the Ravens can't rush the passer. As soon as you get someone who can rush the passer, you'll see the Aaron Rodgers that we've seen most of this season return.
That was Dominic Foxworth with Dan Patrick yesterday. So there is something of a comp there, because Aaron Rodgers is 42. He's only 2 years younger than Phillip Rivers. Of course, he's been playing the last 5 years, and Rivers has not, and he also is able to move. But as you heard Mel talk about the quick release, that's a big part of the ball game in playing quarterback. Peyton Manning couldn't move at all, but he had the quickest release, and Rivers is the same thing. So, maybe he can overcome the fact that he was never fast to begin with, and with looks like a few pounds packed on since he played, we'll see how he looks if, in fact, he gets on the field. There's no guarantee of that. He's still on the practice squad for the Colts, and it's possible that if Riley Leonard can start this weekend against the Seahawks, that we won't see Rivers play. And if he doesn't play, he stays on track to get in the Hall of Fame this year. But if he does play, clock resets, he's off the ballot, and onward and upward we go. Coming up, more on the Commanders' quarterback change again as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. The Lane Kiffin story is wild. Kiffin leaving Ole Miss as his team heads into the playoff to bolt for LSU, takes some assistants with him to LSU, only to send some of them back to Ole Miss to coach in the playoff. You thought that was wild. Well, that was last week. This week, it's crazier. Sherrone Moore fired at the University of Michigan with cause for allegedly inappropriate behavior with a staffer, now in protective custody after allegedly threatening to kill himself and the staffer. That's Michigan. That's one of the blue blood programs in college football, and there are just details spilling out as we move on throughout the day. We'll pass anything along that comes up, but that's the cliff notes of what happened. The school releasing a statement yesterday afternoon that they had fired him with cause, that they had evidence that he was having an affair with a staffer, and there are other reports that he paid for an abortion for her, and then allegedly went home, threatened to kill himself, disappeared, showed up at the staffer's home, allegedly showing up there. Her name is Paige Shriver, and eventually they were able to get him under arrest, and I believe he's still in jail. I haven't seen anything about being released so far. And the secondary story, I mean, the first part of it is absolutely wild. The second part is the reality of the world we live in college football, that this is now the middle of December, and they got to hurry up and get themselves a coach. They got an interim coach as they go off to the Citrus Bowl to play Texas. That's not playoff or anything, so there's nothing to worry about that. But wow, what a bombshell dropping yesterday afternoon, with more details spilling out today as to what happened, because first you hear about the firing and you go, oof, boy, that's really bad, and then you hear that police were called to this particular home in Ann Arbor, and then you later find out that he's not only been arrested, but he's in protective custody. This was a rising star in college football. He had risen from tight ends coach to becoming the head coach of one of the premier programs, and even pulled off a win against Ohio State, not this year, but last year at Ohio State. And now he's, I don't know what happens to him from here, but this is just an explosive story, which is worth keeping an eye on. All right, once again, we're going to see Jayden Daniels on the sidelines when the Commanders play on Sunday at New York. I would have thought that with Coach Dan Quinn saying this past Sunday that he could have come back in the game, that it would be a foregone conclusion that he would play this week. And Quinn had been asked about that on Monday and gave really no indication that there'd been further injury. Now, he did talk to reporters before. I guess he talked to the medical staff, which is a ploy that Ron Rivera used to do when he asked about injuries. He said, I don't know, because I always wait to talk to the trainer until after I talk to you. So, maybe he found out more. But I think there's another level to this. I think that there's real concern in the organization about putting him back on the field, since he's now missed 6 of 13 games. He's had 4 different injuries and a re-injury to an injury that should never have happened, playing in a blowout game against Seattle. Shouldn't have been in the game in the first place, and if he was, he should have just handed off instead, running with the ball, dislocates his elbow, comes back to play last week, and then gets hurt again trying to chase down the player that intercepted him, and now he's going to be out, and the debate goes on whether you sit him for the rest of the year. I think, and I've said this, ever since he was hurt, that if he can play, you play him. I know they're meaningless games, and last week was theoretically a meaningful game because they still had a mathematical chance to make the playoffs. Now they don't have any of that, but there's 17 games. He's in his second year. You need to continue to develop him, and I don't think you can play in fear of him suffering, a serious injury that's going to spill over into next season. Meantime, here's Marcus Mariota. He signed up for this and understands the circumstance that he's in.
It is tough, right? Like, you expect to be playing in meaningful football games in December, but at the same time, like, there is a young core of players here that I think this entirety of this year will help them learn and build. But yeah, it's never easy, but I do appreciate how guys are coming in the building and working hard, and it's not that way everywhere. And when it's this time of the year and you're not in it, guys can very easily check out, but it's not that way with our guys.
Mariota has played on some bad teams, particularly when he was with Tennessee. And so now he's back in that saddle again with a team that's riding an 8-game losing streak, is 3-10, and looking to stay engaged for the last 4.
I think first and foremost, just perspective. We played a children's game, and at the end of the day, like, it's fun to be out there, bringing energy, bringing positivity. That's all that matters. And then at the end of the day, I think guys will kind of rally around that.
For Jayden, he's in 1 week, he's out 2 weeks, he's out. How tough is that to think every time you think you're about to start and then it stops, and how frustrating or how mentally tough is that to go back and forth like that?
I think at this point it's part of the role, and I know it's tough on kind of everybody, right? Like, we're both kind of similar players, but we're very different in our own regards, and I think for everybody to kind of gel and come together, it is hard. But our guys have done a good job of just rallying in whoever it is at that position. And again, like I said, for Jay, it's just like continuing to take all this in, learn, and use it for his career, and hopefully experiences will help him in the future.
How hard is it for you?
Again, it's part of the job. I look forward to the opportunities to play. At the same time, it is what it is, and you're asked to do that in this position. There's moments where it's been great. There's moments where it hasn't been so good. But those are all learning tools for me personally as well, and things that I can hopefully bring to this team.
Okay, and then he's got the 4-game stretch where fans are saying lose out, get the best draft pick you can, not necessarily so you can draft a quarterback, but some quarterback-hungry team may jump up and ask for it. They're in contention for the number one pick. They're playing the team that currently holds the number one pick this week with the Giants. So there is that, what are you playing for at this point?
Yeah, you're setting a foundation. We talked about it in the team room and amongst the team. It's setting a culture. We talk about a culture. We talk about the brotherhood. It's really these moments that tell you who you are. And it's never easy. It's not easy to go out here when it's 20 degrees and to practice. And at the same time, it's great learning tools for everybody here. And the more that we can just build off of that and build off for each other, the future will be better.
The word brotherhood sounds really good when you're winning. When you're losing, it sounds a little bit tired, but they continue to preach that. And I take it on face value when the players say, yeah, we've been with other teams and we've seen them check out. I remember John Riggins years ago used to talk about the last game of the season when it didn't mean anything. He said, yeah, guys would pull into the parking lot and leave their cars running. I mean, that's how bad it can get. We're a long way from that. We still got another month of football left, another 4 games to go. And Javon Kinlaw, one of the players who has managed to stay healthy this year, was one of the good free agent signings that they've had. He's all in on the brotherhood and building for next year and mindset and all that.
I think our minds has been right this whole time, but sometimes you go through things for certain reasons, and I think everything happens for a reason. And it's cool. Everybody gonna kick you when you're down, but we ain't gonna be down for long. I promise you that.
So you said everything happens for a reason. Why do you think this team struggled this year?
I wouldn't even really call it struggle. I think injuries impacted us in a big way from the jump. And I think that shifted a lot of plans and, a lot of adjustments and how we prepared every week. And but like I said, we ain't going to be down for long. I can promise you that.
Okay, well, we'll see. Next year is just about here, really. Next year started really a few weeks ago, and they are 2.5-point underdogs heading to the Giants on Sunday. A couple of other notes about the team. Joe Witt, who's not going to be with the team next year. He's still, I guess, a defensive assistant with Dan Quinn calling the defensive signals. But he's been preaching turnovers. They did have a positive turnover margin last year, though they weren't that great. This year they've been horrible. They did not have a takeaway on Sunday. That's the 8th time in 13 games. And their turnover margin is -11, which is 30th in the league. The most mind-blowing turnover number, and I think they still hold the record for this, plus 43 during the 1983 season. Didn't win the Super Bowl that year, but were an offensive juggernaut. They set a record with the most points in a season, 561, but their turnover margin was plus 43. And part of the reason that they were able to set that scoring record is they were playing on a short field all the time. When you're -11, when the other teams are getting 11 more turnovers than you're creating over those 13 games, that's why you're near the bottom of the league at number 30. Talked about the health of the offensive line, and it has been healthy this year, but there's some numbers that are in the Post today about the pressure rate that they have been giving up. And it's not as good as you might think. You got 2 quarterbacks who can move, and they both have shown the ability to run. One is terrific as a runner. The other's really, really good still, Marcus Mariota. But in this story, they say the Commanders' offensive line is the rare unit of the team that has stayed healthy, but it ranks 19th in pressure rate allowed and 23rd in sack rate allowed. And for all the praise that you've been hearing about first-round pick Josh Connerly, and I think they're willing to let him learn on the job, his numbers are not good. He's given up 35 pressures. That's the 9th most in the NFL. 6 sacks, tied for 11th. And his development is going to be a big part of what they do. But remember, there's a lot of hype for him with Cliff Kingsbury telling Adam Peters, this is the guy I want. And when you take a tackle in the first round, even when you're picking near the bottom as they were this past year, that should be a guy who steps in and starts for you for a long time. And I would say the jury's out. I mean, he's starting now. He's staying healthy. He's learning on the job. He's getting better, but his numbers are not that great. And as far as other injuries, Bobby Wagner sitting out. I imagine he's going to play. He played this past week. Chris Rodriguez sat out with a groin injury. Cornerback Jonathan Jones, rib, and Drake Jackson with a knee injury. They didn't practice yesterday, but I imagine we'll see all of them on Sunday. So it is the toilet bowl. It's 2-11 versus 3-10, and it is what it is. And then this from the NFL, and we've heard. Years go by where you hear some carping about the officials, but this year seems like a big year for that. And I thought the league kind of learned a lesson in 2012 when we had the lockout and it lasted 110 days, lasted 3 weeks of games. And it finally ended at the end of a Seattle-Green Bay game where one official crossed his arms to say incomplete, and the other one standing next to him held up his arms to say touchdown, and that's when they had to say, okay, yeah, we got to get real referees back here. But they're now coming up in the new collective bargaining agreement, and there was a memo that was uncovered, which in their deal, the NFL and the league expires in May. So this is the final year of their current agreement, and they're asking for some changes, the league. And I think these are good things. Rewarding performance so that only high-performing game officials share in the year-end bonus period. You don't do a good job, you don't get a bonus. More flexibility in postseason assignments. The current CBA weighs seniority. Well, that's stupid. That's really stupid. You got to weigh performance. Weighs seniority as a factor in determining postseason assignments. The league believes the best performing officials should be on the field in the postseason. Absolutely. Absolutely. A longer probationary period to assess new officials to gain flexibility in removing those who are underperforming. Of course. Increased training and development for probationary and low-performing officials. Shortening the dead period when the league cannot contact officials currently lasts from the Super Bowl until May 15th. Yeah. I mean, they get paid for it to be a full-time job. I mean, that's always the big argument. Should they be full-time? I don't know what they would do during the week. These are men who reach the top of their fields in other places, business, law, whatever they do, they're top people, and they rise to become officials. I don't think having them sit and watch film all week would be effective, and I don't think you'd get the best people to be referees. That's my feeling. Creating a practice squad. The league says it's considering increasing the number of game officials to develop a deeper bench. Of course. Scott Green is the executive director of the Officials Association. He declined to comment on the memo. We look forward to discussing that with him. It's not really helpful to do it by way of media at this point. We don't want to have another lockout. I think that gives the referees a lot of leverage here. And the league has to say, we want the best people. We want the best people. And look, it's a tough job, and it's become even tougher with HDTV and all the replays. And you sit there for 3 minutes while they say, "Oh, the ball moved half a millimeter." Well, how do they see that? They don't. So I think we're going to move closer and closer. We're doing it in baseball. Football's got to do the same thing, where they have something like a Quest Tech, where you were able to get. It's not just the replays. It's that they have to drill down on this, and they have to be able to overturn bad calls. You have to have that eye in the sky, which they've experimented with spring football. The problem is just nobody watches it. But you can't have games decided by bad officiating. And if you want to say, well, it's a game played by humans and it's refereed by humans, just get rid of the replay. No, it's not going to happen. You're not getting that toothpaste back in the tube. They tried that for a while. The last time in the first go-round that they used replay was when the Redskins won the Super Bowl. And that was Art Monk, who appeared to have caught a touchdown pass, having it overturned on replay. Hall of Fame receiver, broke Steve Largen's receiving record, and I believe retired as the number one receiver of all time before Jerry Rice blew by him, but never caught a touchdown pass in the Super Bowl. Played in 3 of them. Didn't catch a touchdown pass. All right, Bram is coming up next. I am taking tomorrow off, so I will see you back here Monday at 9 a.m.